Do you want to take more interesting landscape photos? Well, do you? I know that I do, and I hope that you do too. See, it's too easy to go somewhere and take average, boring photos of something you never do anything with. Yep, I've taken loads of these myself, so don't worry. And it's so easy to take the same photo of something we've all seen 1,000 times. Let's not do any of that. And no, this isn't the same as the last episode. It's completely different after this beginning bit. More on that in a minute. No, there's so much more that we can do. And in this episode, I am going to tell you 11 things that you can do to help you to take better landscape photos. And that was the answery bit. How utterly splendid. And yes, this is the same intro as the last episode, which was all about travel photography. Well, why not, eh? It's the same question, but about a different genre of photography. Easy for you to say, Rick. But only the intro is the same, the rest is completely shiny new. Hi, and a very warm welcome to episode 205 of the Photography Explained podcast. I'm your host, Rick, and in each episode, I will try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 27 minutes-ish without the irrelevant details. Yes, really. I'm a professionally qualified photographer based in England with a lifetime of photographic experience, which I share with you in my splendid podcast. Right, here are those 11 things I will be talking about in this episode. See, just to prove this isn't the last episode slightly reworded, this is all completely new stuff, and it's good stuff too. Well, it's new apart from number 1. Let's just go through the list quickly. 1. Everything I've covered in the last episode applies here. Yep, that's not new, is it? No, it isn't. 2. Focal lengths. I don't need to say the numbers, do I? Crop factors, tripods, self-timer, rule of thirds and other rules, bad weather, sunrise and sunset, filters, landscape/portrait, photograph what you like. Okay, let's get into this. Firstly, everything I covered in the last episode applies here, which is photograph interesting stuff, of course. Walk, look and think before you take a photo. My photography superpowers. Don't just photograph the obvious. Find different viewpoints. Try to get one photo. Well, I'd have to get that in somewhere, wouldn't I? Don't be put off by rubbish weather. Work out where the best light is. Work out when the best light is. Try a minimalist approach. Choose a rule or rules of composition and work with it/them. And that's the stuff from the last episode that applies here. So move on, Rick. Let's get on to some new stuff. Focal lengths. To begin with, a standard focal length is 50mm on a full-frame camera, 75 to 80mm on a crop sensor camera, and 100mm on a micro four thirds camera. A standard lens is meant to replicate what and how we humans see the world. If we're being pedantic about this, it's been said that a 43mm focal length replicates the human view the best. But what's 7mm between friends? No, 50mm is the accepted standard focal length and has been forever as far as I know. That's as long as I've been into photography, which is quite a long time. Longer than I care to admit to. If you want to know, ask me. And the point here is that with a wide-angle lens you get a wider field of view, and all that goes with that. And with a telephoto lens, you get a narrower field of view, and all that goes with that. Here are some numbers. Wide-angle focal length, in very crude terms, less than 50mm on a full-frame camera, less than 75 to 80mm on a crop sensor camera, and less than 100mm on a micro four thirds camera. Telephoto, more than 50mm on a full-frame camera, more than 75 to 80mm on a crop sensor camera, and more than 100mm on a micro four thirds camera. Now I'm talking here about the effective focal length, not the focal length on the lens, because if you got a 50mm focal length on a micro four thirds camera, you're actually getting 100mm because the crop factor is 2, so 50 times 2 is 100. It's infuriating, isn't it? Why doesn't the lens say 100mm rather than 50mm? There is an optical reason for that, but do we care? No, we don't. Sorry, that wasn't even in the script. Keeping on track, Rick, I talked in general about how focal length changes the composition in episode 203, Understanding Focal Length and its Effect on Composition. So, what landscape photography specific things are there? Don't just assume that landscape photos are always taken with wide-angle lenses, or that they're always taken in landscape orientation. Of course, wide-angle lenses are used for landscape photography, as they help us to capture, well, a landscape. However, within every landscape photo, there will be smaller parts of a composition that can make it completely different. And you can use a telephoto lens to narrow a sweeping vista to, oh, I don't know, a single tree, for example. So take that wide sweeping vista by all means if you want to, but once you've done that, have a look closer and see what you can find within that scene. Now, I love doing this, there's often so much to discover. And here's something that you can do at home, dear listener. Look at some of your landscape photos, zoom in on them and see what you find within your compositions. See if you can find the photos within the photo. This is a super effective thing to do, and it will hopefully also get you looking at your landscape compositions differently when you're out and about taking photos. Yep, I'm all about helping photographers take better photos, including taking photos in different ways and also viewing things differently. So don't just use wide-angle lenses for your landscape photos, okay? Oh yeah, I nearly forgot. You could also move closer to something to get a different perspective. Rather than zooming, you can move closer. And you can move further away, and this is called, wait for it, zooming with your feet. Yes, really. Move on, Rick. Crop factors. Yep, just following on from focal length and that nonsense. So we've got full frame, crop sensor and micro four thirds cameras. Those are the general consumer cameras. There's other specialist cameras, but I'm not covering those here. So you need to bear in mind crop factors. I've covered them above, but this is the point I want to make. 33mm focal length is a wide angle focal length on a full frame camera. But that same 33mm focal length on a crop sensor camera is a standard focal length. And 33mm on a micro four thirds camera gives you 66mm, which is telephoto focal length. It's bonkers, isn't it? But you need to be very aware if your camera has a crop factor, which potentially changes everything with every photo that you take. Right, let's move on to something more straightforward. Tripods. Good old tripods. Well, how can a tripod possibly help you come up with better landscape photos? Simple. Using a tripod, it slows you down and it makes taking a photo a much more considered, deliberate act. And put your camera on a tripod and you'll probably take fewer photos. It's just one of those strange things. And putting your camera on a tripod, it also pushes you into taking more time and care over your composition, as your camera's in a fixed position and you can make minor adjustments to a composition to really refine things and get the best single photo that you can. Taking photos with your camera on a tripod is completely different from taking photos handheld, and it can definitely help you to take better photos. And there's the obvious benefit of getting super sharp photos, and you don't need to worry about low light, shutter speeds, high ISOs, noise, etc, etc. I take every photo that I can with my camera on a tripod. This is related to taking photos with your camera on a tripod, and it's the good old self-timer built into your camera. With your camera on a tripod, use the self-timer to take a photo. I use the 10-second self-timer on my Canon 6D. And this means that after I've gently touched the shutter release button, my camera has another 10 seconds to become as stable as I can get it, which helps me to get the sharpest photos that I can every time. Yeah, of course you can use a remote release to achieve the same, but I got rid of these in favour of the built-in self-timer, and no, I don't use it for selfies. I think that's what they suggest in the camera manuals if you want to take a photograph of yourself. But if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Camera on a tripod. Press the shutter release button. The camera has 10 seconds to settle and any vibrations to hopefully stop. It's nice and still. It's as still as it can be. Why wouldn't you do that? It makes perfect sense. And it's one less thing to have to put into a bag. It's one less thing you have to connect. It's one less thing you have to get batteries for. It just makes sense to me, so that's what I do. Loupe viewers. Right, so your camera's on a tripod and it's a bright sunny day and you can barely see your LCD screen. Now, with my Canon 6D, the LCD screen's rubbish, let's be honest about that. But then again, it was a camera that was first released on the market in 2014, so that criticism is qualified by the fact it's a camera that's over 10 years old, and look how much technology has come on in the last 10 years. But with my iPhone 15 Pro, I cannot see the screen in the sun to take a photo. I've got no chance. So this is what I do. I've got a Loupe viewer. I think that's the right name for it. It attaches to the back of the camera and it shades the LCD screen, and it's got a little flip down bit which you can magnify, and it's got a rubber eye cut. So you put your eye to the screen now and you can see a magnified, fully shaded screen. It's brilliant. I use this in conjunction with the viewfinder, which is one of the main differences between a camera and a phone as far as I'm concerned. I don't like taking photos holding my phone in front of my face. I like looking through a camera viewfinder, and I use the LCD screen to help me to get a better composition. And I can also use the Loupe viewer to review a photo I've taken to see if it's any good. I can't do that with my Canon 6D because I can't see it and I haven't got an electronic viewfinder. That's how old it is. Okay, I think I can move on from there, don't I? Oh no, one thing I want to say about it. I bought my Loupe viewer from from an online retailer, shall we say, a rather popular online retailer, about 12 years ago, and it cost me just over 20 quid. And I've used that one ever since, and it served me splendidly. So get a Loupe viewer if you want to get into landscape photography and see what you're actually doing. Okay, rules of thirds and other rules. Well, the rule of thirds is a landscape photographer's friend. So what's the rule of thirds if you're new to my podcast? Imagine two horizontal lines, one 1/3 up from the bottom and one 2/3 up from the bottom. And then imagine two vertical lines, one 1/3 in from the left and the other 2/3 in from the left. So that's two horizontal lines and two vertical lines. And with my Canon 6D, I can add the 3x3 grid to my LCD screen, which is another reason why the Loupe viewer is helpful, because I use these things to help me make a composition. But how does this help us, Rick? How does this help us? Dead simple. The chances are there's a horizon if you're taking a landscape photo. There's a reasonable chance of that, isn't there? So you put the horizon on one of these lines or near it. We don't have to be precise here, just don't put it in the middle. Put the horizon on the upper line if there's more interesting stuff below the horizon, and put the horizon on the lower line if there's more interest above the horizon, such as in the sky. Putting the horizon in the middle does not give pleasing compositions, and in effect it cuts the composition in half, which is not a good thing. This is a very simple but very effective way to take better landscape photos. What is not to love? Bad weather. Well, bad weather, it can make landscape photos. A clear blue sky can give you photos that are, well, boring to be honest. Good job, because we don't see clear blue skies here in England that often, apart from today, which is yet another day with a lovely clear blue sky. Dull and grey weather isn't great, of course it isn't, but it can be used creatively. If you can capture the detail in a grey sky, you've got a chance of getting an interesting black and white photo. And bad weather can very quickly become dramatic weather, which can make a photo which a lovely sunny day wouldn't have given you. So bad weather, not always bad, but if it's absolutely hammering it down with rain, yeah, we'd all think twice, wouldn't we? Of course we would. Right, sunrise and sunset. These are great times to take landscape photos, of course they are. Sunrise is my preference. I absolutely love witnessing the start of a new day and watching that sun pop up over the horizon. But there's the time before sunrise when you get all sorts of magical things happening with the light. And after the sun has risen, you got that wonderful morning directional light. Now, to really appreciate this morning light, take a photo of something at sunrise and then take a photo of the same thing not long after the sun has risen. And take another photo at noon with the sun overhead in its highest position. And can you tell the difference? The photo taken at noon is probably nowhere near as good as the others. See, it's the quality and direction of the light that can make the difference to any photo. So be mindful of this when you're taking photos, whatever time of day it is. Now, we're not all in the position where we can only take photos when the light's amazing. So be mindful of this when you're taking photos, whatever time of day that is. You might want to plan a day so that when the sun's more overhead, you're photographing other things such as indoors or street stuff, because you can't photograph certain things when they're in complete shadow, can you? Don't not take photos at noon. Just think about what you're taking photos of and be aware of what the light's doing and what the shadows are looking like, okay? Right, filters. Filters, how utterly old school. Filters attach to the front of a lens and they do something to the light that passes through the lens to the camera sensor. There are lots of filters and I've got just two different ones. I've got one neutral density filter and I have one circular polarizing filter. My neutral density filter, ND for short, it's a whopping 10-stop filter. This means that I can use slower shutter speeds with the filter on than without it on, as the neutral density filter reduces the amount of light getting through to the camera sensor. And 10 stops is a massive difference, let me explain. If I'm taking a photo without the ND filter, and I've got a correct exposure with an ISO of 100 of 1/125th of a second at f8. Put my ND filter on and the correct exposure at an ISO of 100 with the same aperture of f8, it goes from 1/125th of a second to, wait for it, 8 seconds. 8 seconds, this is absolutely bonkers. You can do long exposures in broad daylight. But you'll need a tripod, won't you? Yes, you will, Rick. And you know what? Neutral density filters explained is now a future episode. I've just added it to my list when writing this, which is a complete bonus for me. How utterly splendid. And the other filter I've got is a circular polarizing filter, and this can remove or reduce reflections and it can increase the saturation of colours in a photo. And being circular, you can rotate the filter to get the desired effect. And yes, polarizing filters are going to also be an episode all of their own too. So that's 2 new episodes out of this one, which is excellent. I used to have loads of other filters, but I've got these 2 now, and that's it. And the thing that, the thought that came to me as I was writing this, have I ever combined the 2? No, never thought of doing that. And now that I've got that thought, I want to do it. So one day I guess I will. Okay, landscape and portrait orientation. Try both. Don't just assume that a landscape photo should be taken in landscape orientation. And let's not forget, with the way that photos are viewed these days, such as on phones, portrait orientation should be more of a consideration than ever anyway. And another thing that you can do yourself is change the orientation of photos you already have and see what happens, which is another excellent learning tip. Blimey, I'm full of them today, aren't I? And if you're using a tripod, and if not, why not, dear listener? Get an L bracket and you can very quickly change from one to the other, as in portrait to landscape, landscape to portrait, without losing the composition, because the tripod head stays where it is and the camera is taken off the tripod and then rotated through 90 degrees and fixed back on the tripod head in the different orientation, which works an absolute treat. And for completeness on that one, I got an L bracket from a popular online retailer many years ago for about £30, maybe 20-30 quid. And I still use it to this day, and it works a treat. It's just an L-shaped piece of metal with some fixings on it. That's all it is. It's nothing complicated. Last point, photograph what you like. If you like taking photos of beaches at sunrise, take photos of beaches at sunrise. If you like taking photos of empty baked bean cans, take photos of empty baked bean cans. Yep, that was the first example that came into my head after beaches, which I know is a worry. Or is it because I'm hungry? But the point is this: photograph what you want to photograph, what you want to photograph. And if you get to the point where you're being paid to take photos, you're going to lose that choice to a degree, but that's fine if you're being paid, isn't it? Absolutely fine. But while you're not being paid and you can do what you want, take what you want. And if you don't know what you want to photograph, if you don't know what you like to photograph, take everything and anything and see what you like and don't like. Yes, this takes a bit of thought, time and effort, but if you don't know, you don't know. And if you don't know, you need to work it out. But you're going to take better photos if you're taking photos of things you like, and you will enjoy your photography more. And that is a fact, dear listener. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Okay, that's that. Here are some things for you to do. Look at some of your photos and zoom in. See what you can find within a composition. And then do the same when you're out and about taking photos. And with the same photos, try putting landscape orientation photos in portrait orientation and vice versa. And see what happens. See what you think. Have a play with these things and hopefully you will start to think a little bit differently about your compositions. And when you've done this good stuff, let me know how you get on, dear listener. Please let me know. It'd be lovely to hear from you. And hopefully this works for you. Right, what if I use a phone to take photos? Well, as in the last episode, all of the above applies. And I want to repeat the fill the frame bit, which I repeated last episode. With the phone, the default lens is a wide-angle lens, meaning you're starting off with stuff some way away and looking small. So making the conscious decision to fill the frame by either zooming in or moving close to something will improve many photos taken with a phone and will make those photos more distinctive and different from other photos taken with phones. What do I do? Well, I've already told you that, haven't I? These 11 things are what I do. Picking up on a point from the last episode about finding interesting things near you. I went to my local woods once. I'd never been to them before. It was a cold, misty January morning, 5-minute drive from where I used to live. And do you know what? I got some of my favourite photos there. Yes, one cold, misty, mysterious January morning, not far from where I was living. I got some amazing photos that could have been taken anywhere. And that's the point I want to get over here. I know, sorry, I'm going back to the last episode to a degree, but this is so relevant to landscape photography. It's so relevant, it's something I should have mentioned earlier. You can get amazing photos anywhere. What you need is something interesting, some interesting light, some interesting weather. Put the three things together and you can get amazing photos in the woods a mile from where you live, like I did. And I wasn't expecting anything, but I got some really good stuff. And another thing I like to do is to go back to the same place at different times of the year where you get completely different photos. The seasons change, the light changes, everything changes. So just because you've been somewhere once and got some great photos doesn't mean you can't go back and get something different or better. That was take 7 for that very simple sentence that I made a real hash of. So I'm going to move on to some thoughts from the last episode. Just one thing. Taking photos, it's not just raising your camera and pressing the shutter button. The taking the photo bit, it's probably the last 10% of the process for me. There is so much more before you take a photo. And that's where the great photos are created. Not when you press the shutter button, but everything up to that point. The taking the photo is the capturing all the thoughts up to that point. It's the technical end point, okay? Next episode, something about photographing buildings. I'm not sure yet. I haven't got a title. I need to have a think about that one so I'm not duplicating things. So let's see what appears in 2 weeks. And let's give me a quick plug for me and what I do. Why not, eh? If I can't plug myself on my own podcast, where can I? Why not check out the podcast website, photographyexplainedpodcast.com, and my other photography website, rickmcavoyphotography.com, where I write blog posts about my photographs of buildings and lots of other good stuff. And on my courses page, rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses, you will find my course, How to Become a Real Estate Photographer. How utterly splendid. And you can also find me on YouTube talking about my podcast and my blog. Just type my name in and you'll soon find me. Okay, get an email from me if you want a weekly email from me, where I start by talking about the weather. Fill in the box on any of my websites and every Friday you will read what I'm thinking about photography related after the weather update. And that's enough of the self-promotion. If you got a question you'd like me to answer or you just want to say hi, email me, sales@rickmcavoyphotography.co.uk, or text me from the podcast feed. It's always lovely to hear from you, dear listeners. This episode was brought to you by, well, it was a cheese and bacon and tomato and mayo sandwich with no crisps. Yes, a daring sandwich day for me, and it wasn't too bad, to be fair, so that makes a change from a bit of pickle, doesn't it? Which I consumed before settling in my homemade, acoustically cushioned recording emporium. I've been Rick McEvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast, it says here, and for giving me about 27 minutes of your valuable time. Now, I reckon this episode is going to be about 27 minutes long after I've edited out the mistakes and other bad stuff. We'll see. Thanks for listening. Take care. Stay safe. Cheers from me, Rick.